this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
Hey, Ben, what are you doing?
Man, I'm just staring at this podcast. I heard, like, if you stare at it long enough, you get this, like, secret message in your head.
Oh, I hear it. Yeah.
Oh, whatever. Fuck you, man.
Snoochie Boochies. We're talking Mallrats on the Pod of Dreams.
I've never met a person who lives in as much fear of his mother as you do.
You know what I should tell my mother what we do in here at night?
What, that you play video games and I fall asleep unfulfilled?
Oh, she calls you callow in here. You say that like it's bad. Well, it means frightened and weak-willed. That was the only part of the letter I thought was complimentary.
This is Brody's private hell.
Where the hell did that come from? What's going on here?
And these
Brody man, noochie noochies.
are his friends.
Ow!
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. What's a stink palm? Take your hand, you stick it like this. There, now you shake hands with the guy. You know how long it takes for that smell to come off? If you stare at these things long enough, you're supposed to see some kind of hidden three-dimensional picture.
Oh, yeah, look, it's a sailboat.
You saw it too, damn it!
We slept together one time, remember, in high school, that ski trip?
That was you?
Dude, this looks like your mom.
Bye-bye, Easter Bunny.
There is no Easter Bunny!
You know about this game show thing they got going on here? Well, we need you guys to somehow ensure that it doesn't happen.
Fly, badass, fly!
Good evening, and welcome to Truth or Date.
Second suitor, would you ever make whoopee in public?
No, I think that's kind of personal. I don't think I should answer that.
Mallrats.
You said it was a good size.
When a girl says it's a good size, it's a nice way of saying that it's small.
What else did you expect from the director of Clerks?
Hey!
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Pod of Dreams. We're talking Mallrats this week. If you listen, we will pod. Snoochie Boochies. I'm just going to keep saying it over and over again.
I'll snoochie your boochie, Eric.
Ben, what does Snoochie Boochies mean? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? What?
I think it's a noun for weed. That's my best guess. But I think it's one of those words that is very malleable. Like, fuck is a word that can be a lot of things.
Yeah, okay. When they first run into each other, he says, like, noochie noochies, right? And they do their little dance together. I'm very confused. Anyways, coming in hot on the Mallrats talk. We're talking Mallrats this week. I picked it because I think Kevin Smith was going on tour or something, and I read some article where he was talking about his time in Minnesota filming Mallrats, and it, like, I guess I had known that they filmed it here, but forgot it. It was information that went in my brain and out my brain, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's right, it was filmed here in Eden Prairie. And I had seen this before when it came out in the late 90s. It was probably like a friend thing, a bunch of friends watching it. I didn't remember it totally. But
time out. Do we know why he filmed in Minnesota of all places? He's from New Jersey, right? Okay.
Because it was super cheap.
Okay, I was wondering if he got a sweet deal.
Yeah, it was like I think it was $10,000 was the total fee, and the reason they could do it is because the Mall of America had just opened, and the Eden Prairie Mall was like at half capacity. Yeah, it was like nobody was going there anymore because Eden Prairie is pretty close to Bloomington. I mean, it's not a far drive, but so it was just like a dead mall. So it was $10,000 they could film at night, every night for like months that they filmed it during like the winter months. And it was just like a super cheap way to make the movie. Which, if you think about $10,000 is so cheap to be. I mean, back then that was more money than it is now. But like to rent out an entire mall
and change the placards on the storefronts or whatever. No.
I think they literally sectioned off half the mall, and they could do whatever they want. I mean, they built the scaffolding, and they had a stage constructed, like huge, production here. But yeah, for $10,000, it's crazy. So yeah, that's why it's filmed in Eden Prairie, and I just thought let's check it out. We haven't talked Kevin Smith. Maybe we'll start there. What are your overall Kevin Smith thoughts?
I mean, for
as
a hot
filmmaker
minute in my life, well, as a filmmaker, for the most part, I mean, he's more a writer to me than a filmmaker, really. The parts of his movies that work, at least for me, it's really about the writing and the vibes and the ambiance. It's not like very few of his movies, with one notable exception, I think, wow, this movie is so well shot. They're shot fine. They're not poorly shot, but they're just sort of by the numbers filmmaking. For a hot minute, I was into Kevin Smith, late 90s, early 2000s, probably before Jersey Girl came out, and that little window. But I didn't see any Kevin Smith movie in the theater until Clerks 2 and then Zack and Miri Make a Porno. I liked his movies.
That was your first Kevin Smith movie?
No, my first movie in the theater. Okay. My first movie was Dogma, and I didn't see it in the theater. I don't even remember how I saw it. A friend's house with buddies, either late high school, early college, somewhere in there. I saw Dogma. I think late high school, and I loved it. And I got a little more into Kevin Smith, and then eventually got to Clerks and Mallrats. I haven't seen Chasing Amy ever. So if you'd said that movie, I would have been very excited, because of all the movies he's made, that's the one I haven't seen and I want to see the most.
I had that movie and this movie completely mixed up, because I honestly thought Ben Affleck's character in Mallrats was actually what his character is in Chasing Amy. I was totally, when he showed up and he's like the bad guy in this movie, I'm like, wait, what? Wait, that's not right. I was like, this can't be right. But yeah, it's because I was thinking of his character from the other movie.
Oh, fascinating.
Because he's just like a complete dick in this movie. He's awful.
Of course. Yeah, he's supposed to be a raging piece of shit. That's it. And he's fine. It's fine. But, I don't know. I didn't like Clerks 2 all that much. I'm not that interested in this universe. I didn't see the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I didn't see Clerks 3, and neither did anybody else.
Do you like Clerks, though?
Oh, I love the original Clerks. My favorite, my top three would be probably Dogma, Clerks, and Red State. Probably would be my
What is
my three.
Red State?
We can talk. It's a complete aberration. It's unlike all of his other movies. It's more like a straight horror. There's almost no comedy in it.
2011. I've never even heard of it.
It's got John Goodman in it. It's really great.
Really?
But it's very different. If you're thinking a Kevin Smith movie, this is not what anybody's thinking of when they're seeing this. It's like a very serious. Ends up being like a terrorist hostage situation with somebody who's like the Westboro Baptist Church and Fred Phelps, and is there anyway. Some kids get trapped in a compound, and John Goodman works for, I don't know if it's ATF or FBI or whatever, but he comes to try to resolve the situation.
I'm seeing now he's in pre-production on a film called Twilight of Mallrats. Looks to be maybe a sequel of the movie we just watched.
I think he's stuck in like sequel, because this is all anybody wants is sequels of these movies. But I haven't seen a Kevin Smith movie since Zack and Miri Make a Porno and Red State. Those are the last two I've seen, and so that it's been well over a decade.
So had you never seen Mallrats before?
Oh no, I've seen Mallrats.
Okay.
Well, we'll get into it. I don't like it as much as some of his other stuff, but I like it also more than I think I should. We can talk about it. It's got a lot of problems, I think.
It's so misogynistic and sort of adolescent at its core, and it's like there's something like so like the center of the culture right now is comic books, right? And this movie sort of feeds into that like white guy fantasy, which is like loser dudes who read comics and have super hot girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
it's so funny.
Like these girlfriends are too hot for them. These guys are losers and they're pathetic, but we're supposed to root for them. I mean, Jeremy London is supposedly a nice guy. What does he do that's nice in this movie? I have no idea. He has no personality. Neither one really has a personality. How do you have your girlfriends? And I wasn't sure how old they were supposed to be. At first, I thought maybe they were like seniors in high school.
No, they're definitely supposed to be out of high school.
Yeah, they're college like
age.
End of college, to 22, something like that.
Yeah.
But like Jason Lee lives with his mom.
But Jay and Silent Bob how old are they? Are they 30? Who knows with them? Like, how do they know these guys?
Yeah, and Silent Bob looks a lot older, and then Jay looks really young to me. Like, but I kind of like this movie in spite of itself. That's the best way I can put it. Like, I find myself chuckling a lot, but
well, so here's my takeaway. When I was watching this movie, the first scenes where like Shannon Doherty's like dressing him down and like why am I with you? I'm leaving. And then she climbs out. I'm thinking like, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, holy shit, this is just like what the center of the culture is now, is like these white guys who all they cared about was comic books, just had this fantasy of like having super hot girlfriends and like being totally lazy, which is like now everything's based off of those guys. Like those white dudes are at the center of culture with comics. But I was also thinking about is like there was this period of time from, I would say, like 95 to 2005, where I'm sure Kevin Smith is like the same age as most of these filmmakers, where it was literally like just like the same thing. It was these white guy fantasy comedies where they're funny, but they just cranked them out over and over and over again. And I'm thinking like Todd Phillips, Tarantino, this to a certain extent, the Farrelly brothers, like all of those, like Todd. Did I say Todd Phillips?
You did.
The Will Ferrell, Adam McKay, like all of those, they're probably all about the same age, but they were just cranking out Judd Apatow, all these comedies for white guys, like R-rated comedies for white dudes.
Well, Judd Apatow didn't start till 2005. I just want to be clear. Some of these guys aren't really starting till the mid-aughts. Your general point. So like 40-Year-Old Virgin, that's like a 2004, 2005 movie. And
well, okay, so let's extend it from 95 to 2010, I guess, whatever.
Sure.
I'm just saying, like, from that period of time, there was always these kind of movies.
Basically
like,
through The Hangover, and once The Hangover series ended, this did start to go away.
Comedies, R-rated comedies for white dudes is basically how I would categorize this movie. But those just don't exist anymore. It's like a completely dead genre. Which that was like my main. I was like, holy shit! There used to be tons of these movies, and they made a lot of money. They were very successful, and I saw all of them because that was like it was like geared towards my generation, basically. Sure. People in high school at that time or college.
Well, part of what I liked about this movie, for like more, the culture is all like nerds kind of won in a sense, at least with movies in particular, and TV shows to an extent also. But there was this time in the 90s. And maybe early 2000s where the nerds hadn't taken over, and they were kind of a subculture, right? Like in 95, I think is when Mallrats came out, 95, 96. The stuff they're talking about, the references to Wolverine, the Star Wars, this was something that nerds did. It wasn't mainstream.
Right.
And I was a little bit like nostalgic for the time when that was the case, when the nerds didn't win and doom us to this endless scroll of Marvel films that will never end ever.
It wasn't just IP blasts back then. There was other. Star Wars was obviously a popular thing before this movie came out. Sure, and
Batman was too. We get a Batman reference in this.
There was 3 Star Wars movies, and that was it. There was 2 Batman movies or 1 Batman movie at the time this movie came out. That was it. Like there wasn't like 12 of these IP movies coming out all the time, and they weren't the center of the culture back then. Like you said, it's like a crazy, what a quaint time where. Not everything was about comic books.
And Stan Lee, he's at this comic book shop, which and some of this is mall culture is like totally gone away. The Mall of America endures, but like the idea of this mall being this like center of youth culture, that's totally gone, really. I think.
Well, maybe. 8th grade was funny that kind of popped up in there too.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm out of touch, but it feels like it's gone. But he goes to a comic book shop, and Stan Lee is there, and there's a line of nerds waiting around the block. But in like 2010, would Stan Lee be just at a comic book store in Eden Prairie, Minnesota? I think he was probably too famous at that point to be doing that. Just not niche enough. But
it's also that raised a huge question to me. Is like Jason Lee his character is supposed to be this like he knows everything about comic books. He's like telling the person they need cardboard in the back of their comics. He has this giant comic book collection, but yet he doesn't know what Stan Lee looks like. Like that was just completely bonkers to me. Because he's standing there talking to him for a minute, and then Stan Lee's explaining this whole story.
Stan Lee's at the comic book shop he always goes to.
It's insane. Yeah.
But before we get more into Mallrats, I went on a big look diatribe about Kevin Smith. What about you and Kevin Smith? What are you? I think you said they were complicated or mixed last week. Something like that.
I never connected with it.
Sure.
I'm sure I had seen Clerks. I'm sure I had seen this, Chasing Amy, Dogma. Dogma I liked enough. Where it was like, okay, I like that movie, but like Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy are 3 movies that I never would have said I had like enjoyed or wanted to watch. Like I said, I probably watched them because someone else was watching it, and I just didn't care. It just didn't do it for me. I would say about 5 years ago, I I watched Clerks to just like, okay, maybe wasn't giving it its due, and I liked it. I mean, there's some funny stuff in it. I appreciate the fact that this guy like paid for it with his credit cards and stuff.
Right.
Like
$27,000.
Right.
Dirt,
I think that's kind of cool. He's just like, him and his friends decided to make a movie at a place he was working because they could, and he paid for it himself. And now we're watching Kevin Smith movies. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. But it just never really connected. And I think maybe it's because I'm looking at it from like a modern. It's just like, I don't know. This stuff isn't all that interesting to me. I don't care enough about it. But I think this movie, actually, I quite enjoy that. I think this movie is more like joke a minute kind of thing, where there are lots of bits and there's funny moments where it's like, oh, I found myself giggling. I don't know if I burst out laughing a lot.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a gut buster, but
no, but I was like, there's some moments where like
it's nice and absurd. It states that it's going to be absurd on the front, and we get the pan shots of the storefronts at the mall. One's called Popular Girl. One's called like Rug Munchers or Carpet Munchers. They all have these ridiculous names. That were in sparse territory on the front end. It's
not embarrassed to be what it wants to be. You know what I mean? It's not hiding what it is.
It doesn't take anything really seriously.
From the minute where she talks about the story where why she has to do the game show is just complete nonsense.
Oh yeah. It was. Yeah, it didn't make any sense, and everybody's nonchalant, and it was shot like a sitcom.
It's like
almost.
he told the girl that she shouldn't eat the thing because she could get fat, and then she went and swam laps and died.
He said the TV adds 10 pounds, and she swam 700 laps
and died.
And had a yes.
And so she had. I mean, that is like the setup to the movie. That's like the whole like reason for what happens in the movie. It's just crazy. It's stupid.
And almost nobody has any actual personality or development. I mean, like there's no depth to any. These aren't even two-dimensional characters for the most part.
No,
I mean, they have absolutely
comic characters.
They're flat. They're just totally flat. Exactly, but like on a panel.
I did love that it was like a simple like. This movie isn't complicated. It's this dude's girlfriend breaks up with him and she's going to go on a game show and he wants to stop it. Like that's literally the plot of the movie. And I'm okay with that. I like a simple plot. It doesn't need to be complex. And if it's funny, it's funny. The only thing like Jason Lee is just somebody I have never liked.
I was going to say this. You have a lot of people that you just are off-putting to you. Yeah. Jason Lee is in that camp for me.
He's got a lot of Paul Rudd to him where he thinks he's charming and he's really not.
I'll say I think Paul Rudd is in fact charming, but that's fine. You and I can disagree about Paul Rudd. To me, he's Paul Rudd without the charm. He's all smarm, no charm. How about that? All smarm, no charm.
But Ben Affleck's another guy for me too. Is like I don't get at all. I've never gotten why he's ever been in movies. What like he has no talent to me.
He's got a really nice chin. I don't know.
He's not good at anything. He's not funny. He's not a good actor. Like there's nothing about him that I do not. He's tall, I guess, is the only reason he's in movies. I don't understand it.
I think he's somewhat good looking. I think that helps. I mean, if he looked like me, he wouldn't be in movies. No. But I'm with you. I mean, the acting in this movie was straight up bad, I thought, for the most part. I mean, Jeremy London. This is Jeremy London throughout the movie. Brody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like stilted. There's times I can almost like see the cut and the take, and it just like didn't feel natural. And he's got he's got even less personality. Jason Lee was one of the best, and this is damning with faint praise. Jason Lee was probably one of the best people in this movie.
Well, and he was clearly super high the whole time. You could see his eyes were like completely bloodshot. It's just cracked me up.
It was probably a blast to film. I bet they had a great time making the movie. But it's like the acting is bad. It doesn't. I mean, it's just so innately silly that I just kind of. It got me on vibes mostly. I kind of floated along in vibes and occasionally smirked. Like the back of a Volvo joke is so dumb, but they kept repeating it. Like I'm gonna have sex with her somewhere very uncomfortable. What, like the back of a Volkswagen? Like just.
It reminded me a lot of Caddyshack because Caddyshack's a lot of the same way where it's not really like funny, but it's just fun. Like you're just hanging out. It's a good time. Like. Nothing serious really happening.
Celebration of slackers at the mall, right? Like people that Kevin Smith no doubt knew. And then it's like Jay is so mean to Silent Bob, and I just keep laughing. He just keeps swatting the thing out of his hand, keeps calling him a fat ass, and like it's like so mean and ridiculous, but it makes me chuckle. It's just ludicrous from the beginning to end. But it's not a good movie. Like if I'm analyzing this intellectually at all, it really isn't good. Almost all the component parts don't work that well, really. Like, I don't think the acting is that great. It's just something where it's like shot flat like a sitcom, and it's not really interesting to look at. The characters are very shallow and poorly written, but There's just enough like the humor and the silliness, and it just floats along. I was like, all right, I shouldn't like this. I can't really justify liking this, but it does make me laugh. It makes me a little nostalgic for a time, an era of movies when I was a kid, and kind of movies that came out in this window of time that we kind of talked about. I don't know, like, yeah, it's just trying to think. If I made the best performance, like Jason Lee, Shannon Doherty, and then I don't know, after that it's like a cliff. I don't know. I mean, everybody's just really bad. I mean, am I wrong, or is the acting good in here?
No, but I mean, how many comedy movies have really good acting? I don't know if the acting is a fair thing to criticize in this movie.
See, like in Anchorman, that has really great acting. It's comedic, but I think you get comedic timing and charisma and back and forth and rapport and all these other things that make the humor land even more. This, I think you could have plugged in, like, you could have almost any 90s dude. You could put Devon Sawa in there for Jeremy Lin. You could put almost any dude in there, and it wouldn't be any worse of a movie. You could probably have a lot of people doing the Jason Lee part, too. I mean, I don't think it matters all that much. I feel like
is Jason Lee the star of this movie? Would you consider him the lead? Okay.
I mean, he had a bigger career than Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin was on, like, Party of Five and Seventh Heaven. But, like,
he's not the guy from Dazed and Confused, right? Is he?
The lead guy with long hair?
Yeah.
No, it's a different dude.
Okay. Very similar character, though, where he's supposed to be like an athlete because they talk about him playing football or something, but he's also friends with like the stoner guys. It's like an archetype that all of these movies had.
But he's kind of a bully. Like, he threatens to beat up one of the kids in the line for not telling him what was happening in the comic shop.
Yeah.
So it's like, but again, there's no consistency to his characters. Like, whatever. What do we need for the scene? He'll just do that. But Jason Lee, I mean, he was My Name is Earl. He's probably in other stuff, but I mean, he seemed to have the biggest career of like anybody. Shannon Doherty got like Charmed, right? Is coming after this.
So is this post 90210? Wasn't she in 90210?
Oh, probably. I mean, she was the top billed actor in the movie, so she was probably the biggest part of the budget was getting her.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cost like $6 million, so she probably got like $1 million of it at least. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, what did this movie make? So you said it cost $6 million. I bet it made like 120 or something. No, it made $2 million. I was fascinated by this. So Kevin Smith was a bankable in quotes in the 90s and early 2000s because he'd make movies for really cheap and then make profit. You know, Clerk was like $27,000 and made $4 million. That's a really nice turnaround. This cost $6 million and only made $2 million. But then he went back $250,000 for Chasing Amy, and that made like $4 or $5 million or maybe 10. I don't remember. It made a profit. Dogma was $10 million, made $40 million. That was like his biggest out-and-out hit. And then he tried to go mainstream with Jersey Girl, and that cost $35 and made $35. And then, you know, it kind of starts to dip. Clerks 2 didn't make money, made a little bit, and then Zack and Miri made money, but I think that was just because Seth Rogen was like a breakout comedy star in 2008. And after that, it's just losing money. Tusk lost money. Yoga Posers lost money. Jane Silent Bob Remo lost money. Clerks 3 lost money. Red State lost money, which I really like. But
the thing about Kevin Smith to me is like I really like him. Like when he's on a podcast or does an interview, like he seems like a pretty nice person and knowledgeable, like super knowledgeable about movies and making movies and how it's done. And he's like open and describes it. So I like listening to him a lot, and he's like really funny too. Like when you hear him talk. But the way you described this movie is kind of how I think of all of his movies. They're okay. There's some funny bits in it, and like you said, it's sort of nostalgic because you think about how old this movie is. You know, we're talking 30 years now at this point. This we're approaching here. So like, this is an old movie.
Yeah, all of his movies get by on vibes. I would argue, with the exception of Dogma, which has lots of really interesting ideas in it and really smart satire, I think, which is why it resonated with me. It's just got the sharpest ideas of any of his movies.
Well, and it's one of the only movies with sort of a plot. I mean, there's I guess some
there's
direction.
Definitely a plot. No, it's got a clear plot. Absolutely.
Yeah. Really, he's like one of the prototypes of the like let's vibe and hang out, like Richard Linklater. His movies, like
Richard Linklater inspired him to do Clerks. He saw Slackers. Have you ever seen Slackers?
I have not. It's
I don't think you'd like it
on my list of. Well, Linklater's one of those guys. Like same with Kevin Smith. I mean, some of his movies, I think, like Boyhood's great. Like, that's a legitimately great movie, but there's no plot to that movie. It's just watching a kid grow up, you know?
Yeah, you're all right. And Slacker doesn't have a plot either. It makes me nostalgic, even though I was like 7 in 1991. It also makes me nostalgic for this like period of time where I wasn't really participating in culture. But I mean, it just shows you Austin, and the camera like will follow two people having a really weird ass conversation, like stoner hippie, keep Austin weird conversation, and then it'll just follow a different person, and it just moves, and you just soak in Austin circa 1991, and it's a lot of weirdos just having conversations about weird stuff. I love it, but I don't know if it's your speed, Eric, but it's worth a watch. I just don't know that you love it. But anyway, that movie, Kevin Smith saw that. He's like, oh, if Slacker counts as a movie, I can make a movie. If that's a movie, I can do that. And then he shot Clerks, and that movie was, a big indie hit.
Well, and there's literally no plot to Clerks. Like,
no.
No discernible thread. There's just them at the video store.
Yep. But I also don't love this universe. I mean, maybe there are throngs of Kevin Smith fans that want the, further adventures of all these characters, but I really don't. I saw Clerks 2, and I was like, man, I don't love these characters. And at some point, they get pathetic, right? Like, seeing these guys hanging out in a mall 10 years later would start to get really pathetic, and it'd be hard to make them look even vaguely heroic if they were like 35, right? It just doesn't land.
The continuity also confuses me too, because and you don't care about that, but like,
no, I don't, but that's fine.
In this movie, the guy in Clerks is in it. He's one of the contestants on the game show, but he's not that same guy, is he?
No, he's not. He's not. Dante is the guy from Clerks.
Right, Dante.
And that guy's name was not Dante. I don't remember what his name was, but it wasn't Dante. And
Jay and Silent Bob are clearly the same people. They're supposed to be. But like,
but I don't get it. Like,
Brody's not. Is Brody in Dogma? That guy, Jason Lee is, but he's not Brody, right?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think Brody shows up in any other movie.
No, he doesn't, and I don't think Jeremy London's character does either. Whatever his name is, again, very forgettable.
And Ben Affleck's a different guy in Chasing Amy. Yeah, so there's really no continuity.
Clerks take place in New Jersey.
Yeah,
that's
I think so.
So why are Jay and Silent Bob hanging out in Prairie Mall if they live and hang out in New Jersey? I don't
know if they're actually supposed to be in Minnesota. Like, I think they just left it say Eden Prairie Mall.
Okay.
I don't know. They never they never say
that
Minnesota in this movie.
You're right. That makes perfect sense. That's supposed to be quote unquote Eden Prairie, New Jersey.
New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, that would make a billion times more sense. Okay. I think that that's the missing piece. Because the guy was
weird that they show
Rutgers.
maybe that was like part of the deals. You got to show the outside of the mall or something, like.
Sure, we want to make it seem cool.
Yeah,
got it. That makes sense, because the guy was from Rutgers, and it was like, why for this stupid game show where they fly somebody from New Jersey to Minnesota for what looks like a very cheap set for a very lame game show? I was like, oh, that makes sense. They're treating it like it's New Jersey, and it just happens to be Eden Prairie. I'm projecting the Minnesota onto it, but in the universe of the movie, it doesn't exist. Yeah, I don't care. I don't know. Like, at the end of this movie, it's like it gave us the stupid like epilogue. It reminded me of Animal House, right? I don't know if you remember the end of Animal House.
Yeah.
All the characters get like what happened to them, and it's absurd. And like Bluto becomes a senator, like John Belushi's character. Like, the guy gets the Tonight Show and lives with his parents, and they get married at the Jaws ride.
Yeah.
And it's nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense. But then it's like Jay and Silent Bob will return, and it shows them on the road, and it's like previewing Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And I don't care. This is not exciting. But
other thing about this movie that ties into what you're saying is the soundtrack, the Weezer song that plays at the end of the movie. Fucking awesome Weezer song. Oh yeah. That there's like some Soundgarden in this too.
Oh, like, it hits you. Yeah, it hits the nostalgia.
A lot of great '90s rock tunes in this.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's part of the vibes. Let's put you in that time and place. I remember seeing the movie when I was probably in my early 20s when I saw Mallrats. Like, oh yeah. Hit the nostalgia button, but I'm like,
I mean, even the magic painting thing, like that's such a time. Like if I showed that to my kids, they'd be like, "What?"
And that bit was so stupid, but they just laid into
dumb.
it.
Yeah,
he just yelling at kids, and they do the same joke over and over again. Everybody's like, "Oh, a sailboat." It's
not a schooner; it's a sailboat.
Schooner is a sailboat, idiot. And it just keeps doing it. Literally, I don't know how many people say like, "Oh, look, a sailboat." Like everyone just goes by and says it's a sailboat. And yet it works. And then he gets mad and shakes the stage. But like Jay and Silent Bob, they work as side characters. I don't want a movie about them. I didn't like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
I don't think I've seen that. I really don't.
You don't need to. You don't need to have any.
Did they break into a mall in that one? Is there something about a mall?
Maybe.
They commit a robbery, Okay.
Because there's like a feminist terrorist group, and one of them falls in love with Jay.
Okay, maybe
but
I
she
have seen that.
convinces them to like steal something.
Yep.
And then he's like, I am the clique commander, because the name of
That's
the group is like the.
With Mark Hamill, isn't Mark Hamill?
Eventually, they have to fight Mark Hamill.
Yep. Okay, and then I have seen it. Yeah, that movie's terrible. It's not good.
It didn't work for me the first time. Like I got nothing out of it. It's like, why are these side characters getting their own movie? It doesn't. I don't care. And they rebooted it in 2019. I don't care. I mean, I'm not in love with this universe and these characters. Like it worked at a certain time and place. Like if I'm watching them in the 90s, it works. If I'm watching the original Clerks and it's in the black and white and they're there at the store when video stores were still around, right? In this just certain time and place, that works. But now you try to take these characters into the 21st century. I don't want them. I don't want them in the 21st century. Go away.
What do you think about the referencing pop culture? Because like that is fun. Oddly enough, like that's a Marvel thing, right? Every Marvel movie has some pop culture reference. I think in one of the Marvel movies, isn't Infinity War where Tony Stark's like, no more pop culture references out of you. Like that's like oddly descendant of this movie or Kevin Smith, because all of his movies reference other pop culture movies, which is, I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And this movie felt a little annoying, like the Batman thing. It's like, where do you get these wonderful toys? Like that's not. Is that funny?
Well, that wasn't clever. It was just a direct reference. It's not even really a spoof. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they do Star Wars. Literally the scene with Kevin Smith hanging down, trying to pull the cassette. That's the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, right?
Right.
Literally verbatim. There were a couple others that I forgot.
That's using the movie reference to like his life, which I guess makes sense that guy would like do something that weird. I just think like the referencing other movies like as a joke, like what they say is, I don't know if that works.
I like that a little bit more again because it used to not be commonplace all the time.
Right, maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
Like this at the time, I think that's part of where Kevin Smith was like a refreshing new voice. It's like there weren't a lot of movies that were like that did. But
now every movie is that. Deadpool or whatever. Like every movie is just referencing other movies.
Correct. Yeah, and it's not special or unique anymore. And I would say Kevin Smith has never been a mainstream filmmaker. I mean, if you're into movies, you're aware of him. But I mean, I think Dogma was his biggest hit, and that was like 40 million is what it made. He's never had a movie that's...
Shocked he's never made a Marvel movie. Like, what's up with... they have to have asked him, right? Or does he not want to do it? That's so weird to me that this guy he's like the godfather of comics in movies, never made a comic book movie.
Well, he has the story, right? Doesn't he have the story about the Superman movie?
Oh, the Nick Cage Superman movie. That's right. He was going to make that. That's true.
Right. He has the one, and the guy ended up making Wild Wild West because he had the whole thing that he wanted them to be a giant metal spider, and then he put that in Wild Wild West. But I know, I think he would want to be able to do it his own way, and I think a lot of directors just don't want to be put in the Marvel machine where it's like you have like this tiny bit of creative freedom, and everything else is let's advertise more Marvel movies. Let's send it to the people doing all the CGI that are underpaid and crank out more movies. I think it's not gratifying if you want to make your own thing. If he had free reign to do what he wanted, didn't have to worry about continuity or tying into other movies, I think I would love to see a Kevin Smith superhero movie. But I don't want to see a Marvel machine movie.
The Boys that you ever watched on Amazon, the show The Boys?
Yeah, I'm in season 2. I had to take a break.
That totally seems like a Kevin Smith kind of thing. That he like that's the kind of superhero shit he would make, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Sure. If he could make a movie like that of like an actual superhero, that'd be really interesting. But his movies aren't that bankable. I mean, he's not really had anything that's a big hit. He's never had a movie that costs more than $35 million to make. That was Jersey Girl, which was probably just Ben Affleck for the most part, like Ben Affleck's salary at the time, because he was probably cost a lot to have him in his movie. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's bankable. I don't think any executive is going to say, hey, this guy, people like his movies. And Marvel's thing seems to be like either take some new director and give them a chance to do a Marvel movie, or taking somebody, I don't know. Sam Raimi did one. I don't know. Marvel's weird.
Like Edgar Wright, he almost did one, and then they fired him.
But he left because he couldn't do what he wanted. He got to a point where he's like, okay, this is too restrictive and annoying. Like, this is what I think the movie should be. But yeah, I mean, he could make I think, or at least write a really good. I don't know if I'd want him to shoot it, but I think he could write a really good movie. I don't know. But it's like there's a window.
Someone's gonna say Snoochie Boochies, so maybe you're gonna get Captain America to say Snoochie Boochies.
I mean, I guess.
Well, because he hits the guy with the bat, and then he says "snoochie boochies," and then when the contestants, he's like, "You got to calm down. What do you got to do?" He pulls out the bag of weed, and he's like, "Snoochie boochies." So does that mean the same thing? He just hit a guy.
It's context. It's like fuck, fuck you. I'm gonna go fuck this fucking shit. It can be whatever word you want it to be. I don't know. He doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's like he does a Wolverine reference or Weapon X at some point. He goes like, "We're slashing," yep. And at the time, I mean, that's not a thing most people would have gotten. I don't think. I think the standard moviegoer would be like, "Whatever." I don't know what he's even talking about.
Yeah.
Nowadays, of course, there's been 18 Wolverine movies. People would understand what it is, but I don't know. I mean, I just think, for a certain nerd culture, mostly white guys, liking the pop culture reference, liking a movie that celebrates being a nerd, that was kind of fun for a while, and then it stopped being fun. I don't know.
It's kind of gone full circle on it, hasn't it? It's kind of interesting watching it now.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's not going to make my top 500 movies of all time list, that's for sure. But I enjoyed it. Have you seen Tusk?
No.
See, and I haven't either. I have zero interest.
Justin Long, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know what happens in it. It's not a mystery.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Yoga Posers either.
No, you said that earlier, and I was like, "What the?"
I was looking through his filmography because he was going to do like a trilogy of horror movies.
I have not seen hardly any of them.
The only one I would recommend to
Cop Out, I have seen that. I kind of enjoyed that. He didn't write that movie, but it's kind of fun.
It didn't look interesting to me at the time. Yeah. I was already kind of on the outs. I liked Zack and Miri Make a Porno, but that was mostly because like Seth Rogen's kind of funny. It's not great.
He didn't write that either.
Yeah, it was just you had some of the usual actors he had in it from his crew. I mean, Elizabeth Banks and Seth Rogen, they're kind of sweet. It was kind of funny. It wasn't amazing. There's some gross out stuff in there, but it was just kind of like, all right, I've gotten the sell by date for Kevin Smith movies has passed. The only one I recommend that you watch that I think is worth a watch is Red State. I don't want to promise it will change your life, but it's totally
more different. Of a horror movie.
It's like out and out thriller / horror movie. It's got very almost overtly political, and it's pretty much not funny at all. Like, don't go in expecting jokes. It's very, very serious. Yeah. So anyway, I would recommend it. That's worth a watch. I think it's really good. But if you want a Kevin Smith movie, I don't think his fans would watch it and think. I mean, I think you'd be disappointed if you wanted the typical Kevin Smith experience. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot else to say about Mallrats. It's very, very silly. The protagonist is pathetic all the way through, and he's rewarded for being pathetic. Jason Lee is rewarded for being pathetic. He doesn't have to change at all. He doesn't have to grow, right? This is part of the fantasy.
Yeah.
He gets to stay just how he is, right? We talked a lot about 8th grade, Kayla changing. These characters are clearly pathetic, but they're our heroes, and we just celebrate them at the end. But he's also still kind of pathetic because he lives with his mom, but he's hosting the Tonight Show. It doesn't make any sense. It's absurdist.
Yeah, I just wonder if, are we too sensitive for movies like this now, or is it just that people aren't making this because we decided it's not funny anymore? I don't know. I kind of long for a comedy that doesn't have to have a message. You know what I mean? It could just be funny. And that's what this movie is. There's no real message about it. It's not trying to change the world. It's just some guy's perspective on funny stuff that might happen, and it's kind of funny. And I kind of long for movies like that. I wish they existed now.
I mean, I think in general, the culture is not that interested. I mean,
what was the last comedy movie that came out where you remember oh yeah, that was really funny?
8th grade, probably. I laughed a lot during Everything Everywhere All at Once. I was just full of it. It's Too Weird for You, Hot Dog Fingers, and the 2001 Hot Dog Fingers. That's not really
which is won an Oscar for Best Picture. I would not say that's a comedy movie.
I don't know. It's kind of an action comedy. There's some really overtly comedic stuff with the raccoon under the hat. I don't know. That's fine. But I had a lot of overt laughs from Everything Everywhere All at Once. 8th grade.
I think Judd Apatow was the last of these kind of movies. Since he doesn't really make a whole lot of these anymore. Like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, like that kind of movie, they just don't come out anymore.
I mean, now you said him earlier, and I can't think of his name, but the movie about the Wall Street collapse.
Adam McKay, yeah, Big Short.
Big Short. I laughed a lot during The Big Short. I mean, it's depressing.
But
too.
I mean, are those even really comedy? Talladega Nights is a comedy, and
Well, Step Brothers is around the same time as Judd
But those
Apatow.
are almost 20 years old now at this point,
Sure. I mean, what wasn't Step Brothers like 2010? It doesn't matter. That's still 15 years. I don't know. I mean, these comedies don't work for me anymore. Like, Blockers is one that came out that's kind of like that. It's got a message, quote unquote, but it's very broad and silly. It doesn't exist in reality. The characters aren't plausible. Everything that happens is ludicrous and raunchy. And that movie just didn't work for me at all.
Neighbors, like Seth Rogen's done some of these movies, and Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know. I think they're around, but they're not mainstream hits. The Hangover is like the last series I remember being like this big.
That was such a huge movie too when that came out.
And they made 3 of those movies.
I know.
And they were all pretty big hits. They just
remade them like the exact same movie.
Yep. It's because I think the last one was probably like 2012, 2013, and we were talking 10 years ago. And then they just kind of vanished.
Do you think
there's like change? But yeah,
if someone tried it, it would be successful? Like,
it depends on what they do. I mean, I don't know. A bunch of white guys being drunk and obnoxious and being assholes is probably not going to resonate with the culture writ large now. Generally speaking, I don't think. But if you get a few $1 million and you want to fund it,
I mean,
you
that's
can try.
the other funny about Mallrats. Like, there is not a person of color in this entire movie.
Nope. I mean, there's lots.
I don't think there was. Like, looking back on it, not even a side character or someone that had a line. I don't think there was a single.
When you look at the audience, it was like, that's a lot of white people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And if you're interested at all, like in the female perspective, I mean, the women are absolutely objects.
Yeah, it's a totally misogynistic movie. Like, but all of those movies were back then.
That's
old
true.
Old school is completely misogynistic, right? Like all of them, But you mentioned, Caddyshack has its problems as well, and
Caddyshack
Animal House is like one of the worst too. Like, that movie's terrible in terms of sexism and.
I think that era is gone. I don't think it's coming back like that. I think we're too acutely aware of that kind of stuff.
But you could still make a movie about like dudes in college or dudes in high school, like trying to have sex and not make it problematic. There's got to be a way to do that and still have it be funny, right? No?
Potentially. I don't know. When did Superbad come out? I mean, that's 2008, I think. I mean, it maybe is. I know National Lampoon still cranks out those like direct to DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, like National Lampoon's American Pie Bandcamp. I mean, those movies still get made, but they are absolutely not mainstream anymore. They're just cranked out shitty boner comedies. But yeah, I don't know. The boner comedy is kind of an old thing. It's just done. I don't know.
It is like literally done. It's a genre movie that's just over.
It just happens. People just like stop. They're like, I don't want that anymore.
It's like the Western, right? I mean, there'll be one that pops up every now and then, but it's not a mainstream genre anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like people smoking profusely in movies. It's, unless you're really trying to make a comment about their character, you're just not going to see it. I don't know. I mean, these movies came and went. This happens to every genre. And I get that. To me, I'm nostalgic a little bit because I remember liking these movies too. But I don't know, there's plenty of these movies that still exist. You can rewatch the classics. There are probably some smaller ones that you haven't seen that were made. I don't know.
God, like Tommy Boy, Dumb and Dumber. I loved these movies. They're just like indelible to who I am and what I like about movies, but they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, when was the most recent Dumb and Dumber or whichever one with Jim Carrey? When did that come out?
Not that long ago, like 5 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't that long ago.
Did you watch it?
I've never seen it. No, I didn't want to because I've heard it's not good, and I don't
Oh, I hate comedy sequels. I hate them.
Did we talk about? I think Anchorman 2 is actually pretty funny.
It's okay.
I think it works. It's definitely not as good as the first one. But
that's the thing. It's like categorically not as good as the first one. It was okay. I laughed a couple of times. But it's like you're just rehashing the jokes. I don't want to see the sequel to Super Troopers. I loved Super Troopers. That was a movie that my friends and I quoted relentlessly.
Also filmed in Minnesota, right? All those guys are from Minnesota.
Are they? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, but I don't know. I don't like comedy sequels, and I think they're mostly gone. I don't know, and you're not going to get too many. I mean, whatever. Booksmart, we talked about it last week. What's that? 3 or 4 years ago?
Booksmart okay. So that's an example of I think a really funny movie that has some of the same themes. It's like high school, having sex, getting fucked up, doing stupid shit. But I think it's done in a very respectful way to people of different genders and different orientations and all that stuff. I think that's a good example of how, I don't know, maybe it wasn't successful. I don't remember if it was like, but why that hasn't just been like copied over and over again.
I don't think it was. I don't think it made a lot of money.
It's very good. I really like that.
Bridesmaids was a big hit, but I don't even remember there aren't that many Bridesmaids copycats. Were there?
No.
I don't remember that many.
But that's another example. Like that movie's really funny. I think it's probably more on the problematic side for certain things, But
I don't. I mean, you could be right. I don't remember it that well. I mean, it's been over a decade since I've seen it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd love
to see one. Somebody out there make a funny movie again. I'd love to see a funny movie.
Well, funny in the particular way Eric wants it to be funny.
Well,
you can't have
the
a message.
particular way that everybody thought it was funny 20 years ago.
Well, that isn't happening. Everybody agrees on what's. I mean, monoculture is almost gone. I mean, we don't agree on hardly anything. Everything's divisive. Star Wars divisive. Everything. It's
just enough where there's a large enough segment of people that find it funny. I don't know. Well,
that's fine. I mean, I've seen movies that I think are funny, but they're not the kind of movies you want. With a lot of throwaway gags that don't correspond to anything, and it's just silliness for an hour and a half. But I mean, let's give a rating to Mallrats. Where are you at with Mallrats?
I was somewhere in the three-ish range, maybe 3.5, maybe 2.5, somewhere in between there. I'll stay with 3.
We are in lockstep for the first time in a while. It's 3. I feel like 3 is kind of generous, really.
Yeah.
Because it's not that good, really. This is a very subjective rating.
If you show this movie to somebody who didn't grow up in the 90s, who's like a 25-year-old dude right now, they would be like, what the fuck is this?
They wouldn't care. Be like, wait, you guys like this shit?
Yeah.
Sure. It a bit like if
he's talking about Wolverine, like, you mean like the Wolverine from the movies? Like what? Yeah. Well, it wasn't in movies back then. You'd have to explain. It
was a lot cooler because not everybody did it. Or like how I'd look at somebody watching Ski School or something. Like I didn't see Ski School, but there's just a lot of like even crazier, or like Porky's. I don't know. Porky's was never like my jam, but other people are nostalgic for it. I don't know. But yeah, 3 is, and that is really subjective. I mean, if I were trying to give it artistic merit, I might go like a 2. I don't think it's very good. I mean, I kept thinking this is shot like a sitcom. It's really, really not fun to look at all for the most part. But it's just nostalgia. And
well, I mean, it brings up a good, like, Seinfeld was really big then, I mean, that had a huge influence on comedy. It does have a little bit of a Seinfeld-y kind of vibe to it.
A little bit, yeah. I had to defend my libido, the scene in the elevator, that feels like it could have been a Seinfeld scene almost. But I'm just
there's a lot of sight gags like Kramer-esque, like where he turns and hits his head on the thing and yelling at the kid for the escalator. That seems like a Seinfeld kind of bit. Yeah.
Silent Bob slipping on the stupid the little back and forth with the kid. He's mean to the kid.
Yeah.
So the kid throws the little truck out, and then Silent Bob ends up crashing in, and we see him break into the wardrobe twice. He crashes in the wardrobe twice, and that woman who's in Chasing Amy, I don't even know the actor's name, but she just the same bit again. And Silent Bob doesn't have to go to the hospital. Yeah. You get some very gratuitous nudity for no reason. Yep. She's trying on.
That's another. That is like a lost, like that. If you showed that to like a 20-year-old, they'd be like, what is that? Like, you could just, there's just boobs for no reason. Like, yeah,
For
that
no
used
reason.
to be in like every movie that came out. If it was an R rating, it meant you were going to see some boobs at some point throughout the movie.
Yeah, and she's trying on panties, literally just in the Victoria's Secret or whatever, just trying them on and off. Just whatever. Okay. Silent Bob doesn't get hurt even though he crashes.
Well, I was saying is like they knew who these movies were
consequences.
for. These were for like 20-year-old white dudes. Like they knew exactly.
People
who
didn't see this. This is a movie that made $2 million.
That's true.
I mean, and it had a budget of $6 million. I mean, that's.
But
that's
I think
a lot.
Kevin Smith is like, this is what I want. Because
Sure,
I'm
he
a
had enough clout.
22-year-old white guy, and this is everything I want, and so I'm just gonna make a movie that has
He
everything.
did.
that I
He
want.
made the movie he wanted.
Yeah.
Right. He had enough clout to get it done. I
think maybe that's what it is. Like he didn't care, like if it was a hit. He didn't care if it appealed to other people. It's like, this is what I want.
No,
and
sure.
that's what he did.
Sure.
And I think we need more of that. I think we need more people saying, I don't care if this appeals to other people. I think this is what I want to see and what I care about.
Well,
because that sort of personal is more universal, I think, in most cases.
Sure. Well, that's true, but you got to convince somebody to give you money to do that. That's the tricky part.
Or put it on a credit card like Kevin Smith did.
Well, then you have to make a movie for $27,000, but yeah, you can try. Sure. But no, yeah, it's a movie of a certain time, a certain place. When I was younger, I'm
glad I watched it. I was happy to watch it.
Sure. It made me, I should watch Chasing Amy, and then I don't need to see a Kevin Smith movie again for a very long time. It's the only one I'm like, man, that movie was well regarded. People liked it, and I just never got around to watching it. So
agreed.
Let's get to 6 Degrees of Field of Dreams.
Okay. Would you like me to start?
Sure.
All right. So I went with her name is Claire Forlani, I think is her name. She plays Brandy. She is TS's girlfriend that breaks up with them.
TS is the guy's name. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. She's in The Rock. Welcome to The Rock.
Yeah, I remember.
She
The Rock.
plays Sean Connery's daughter, I think. Right? Yeah. Nicolas Cage is in The Rock. Nicolas Cage is in Face Off with John Travolta, who's in Pulp Fiction with Frank Wally.
Okay. I did Michael Rooker, who's the dad.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about Michael Rooker. Like, the whole, like, the stink palm thing that he like sucks on his finger and he's got the melting pretzel. Like, oh, man. Like, what a stupid gag. But, like,
it doesn't make any sense to you because I don't think that character would eat those for even a second. Like, it's so implausible. I'm like, he wouldn't eat those. There's just no way. He would just say
melting. No. Like, you would look at them like, what the? No, I'm not eating your melting chocolate pretzels. Like, what are you talking about?
But the film wants him to eat it, so he eats the shit-covered pretzels.
It made me laugh. I don't know. Like,
it's so stupid.
Sick. That is like totally a Caddyshack joke. Like 100%. Yeah.
And he gets sick and he doesn't go home and he's just puking into a bag, which looks too small to hold puke anyway. I think that.
I loved how the bag, it was like a paper bag, but then it had like a plastic bag inside it. You know, seems like well thought out. If you're gonna throw up into it, you don't want to just throw up in the paper bag; it would just rip through. You know, got to have something to hold it in there.
Yeah, I guess. And then Jason Lee wins the crowd over with just by being an idiot who doesn't know what making whoopee is, and I don't know. Like they don't even try to hide their voices; they just whatever.
Yeah.
They just complain and whine, and like, what are they even fighting about? What's going on? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But Michael Rooker, he's in a lot of stuff, but he's in Mississippi Burning with Willem Dafoe, movie I think I saw in high school in like class, but have almost no memory of other than there was some cross burning. Willem Dafoe was in The Last Temptation of Christ, Scorsese movie, controversial, with a fellow named Harvey Keitel. And Harvey Keitel, I have to pull this up because I do not know. All right. And Harvey Keitel is in a movie called Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, which is according to Wikipedia, a 1976 revisionist Western directed by Robert Altman. And it stars a lot of people, but it's got Burt Lancaster in it, who is in Field of Dreams.
You could have done Pulp Fiction, too. Like, come on.
Oh, that's right. Harvey Keitel is in Pulp Fiction, but trying to be original. Pulp Fiction And so we all hop around. But all right, so I've got some clues. We're gonna do a new movie. I got clues. Eric's gonna see if he can guess what movie we're doing next. And so let's start with Eric. The year, as I always do, because I'm lazy. 1956.
Whoa, we're going way back. 1956. Okay.
So, clue number 2. This is the first movie that had a purposeful behind the scenes that was shot concurrently with the movie. The first one to do it.
Behind the scenes with the movie. Hitchcock movie? Are we? Oh.
Could be. Are you going to guess a Hitchcock movie? I mean,
North by Northwest. I don't know what year that came out.
I think that was 59, and it's not North by Northwest. So a scene in this movie actually inspired the scene in Star Wars A New Hope when Luke Skywalker comes back and sees his aunt and uncle burned to a crisp. That sequence. It's taken almost directly from this movie. I mean, not as explicit, I guess, but...
Like Seven Samurai older than that? It is older, isn't it?
I mean, you're close with Seven Samurai. It's not Seven Samurai. I think Seven Samurai is 54.
Okay.
You're very close. You're a couple years off.
Yojimbo?
That's not Yojimbo. Nope.
Throne of Blood?
Nope, it's not Throne of Blood. Okay. Although I mean, you're right that Lucas stole heavily from Kurosawa.
Right, that's what...
It's not a Kurosawa movie.
It's not Kurosawa, okay.
In this particular scene. The star of the movie is Marion Morrison.
Should I know that name?
That's a good question. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But I think you probably do know the name. If you really think about it. So that didn't help. All right, then the last thing. The director of this movie was actually played by David Lynch in a recent 2022 film that was nominated for Best Picture.
So we're talking Ford.
There you go.
It's not the man who shot Liberty Valance, right? No.
That's 62.
I don't know, like Stagecoach or something?
Stagecoach is 39. I wouldn't make you watch Stagecoach.
Okay. I've seen Stagecoach.
Oh, wow. Why did you watch Stagecoach?
Went on a run for watching Westerns. I don't know. What's the...
It's the movie is The Searchers.
Oh, okay.
So John Wayne's the star. His birth name was Marion Morrison. I was being clever. That was his birth name, but obviously John Wayne is the star.
Okay.
By some considered to be the best or one of the best Westerns of all time.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
The door shot, right, where that's like the original walking through the door where you see the landscape.
There's that shot. There are a lot of great shots in it. I mean, I think it's a good movie. That's a spoiler. But I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I wanted to rewatch it. I haven't seen it in probably 15 years. I think it's a great Western to talk about and one that's well regarded. Mention Westerns.
I have recently watched this, so.
But you have?
Yeah, probably within the last year.
Oh, wow. You watched it on your own?
Yeah, well, like I said, I watched a bunch of Westerns. Like Stagecoach was one of them. I think I watched a bunch of John Ford.
I thought about doing this like a few months ago and decided not to. I think I felt bad about doing too many old movies and just like, let's spare it.
That's all right.
All right, well, I'm going to rewatch it. You rewatch it or not, depending on how well you remember it.
Yeah, no, I will.
I also thought about doing Swiss Army Man, but I didn't want to hear you complain about Paul Dano. You don't like him again. I didn't want to get back into that territory.
Have you seen that before?
No, I haven't. I saw it on HBO.
We should do it sometime because I have not seen it either.
I was like, I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. You probably see the first movie. It looks weird in a way that works for me, and maybe you don't like, but it does star Paul Dano, so you'll have to get past.
We'll see if I like. I have yet to like him really in a movie, so we'll see.
Well, I'll keep that on the back burner then as a possibility.
Honestly, I think it's why I didn't like the Batman movie. That movie should be everything I love. Like it's like a detective movie. Seems kind of a dark Batman movie. But I watched it once and I don't know. I've never really desired to revisit it.
Oh, it's pretty dreary. I don't know. It's pretty depressing.
It's long. It's like 2.5, 3 hours long.
It's like I don't need to see just a bleak movie about a terror. I mean, it's like okay, I can only handle so much cynicism. I'm cynical enough as it is. Sometimes I need a little. Give me a nice Superman, positive. Christopher Reeves coming and saving everything and brightly colored. It's not that horrifying. But Searchers next week.
Cool.
Nice
Snoochie
listening, everybody.
Boochies.
Snoochie Boochies.